welcome back to another Tuesday on the official Team House Riot collab channel. If you watched yesterday's video, you know that this week is Theory Week, and basically we're just going to be talking about all different kinds of theories that we found online or that we believe or whatever. And so, me being the natural Disney nerd that I am, I decided to look up a couple of Disney theories online. And I'm going to read off the ones that I found the most interesting. So the first theory that I found is kind of a relatively well-known theory. And it's a theory that Frozen is somehow connected to Tangled, The Little Mermaid, and Tarzan. And so the first part of that theory is how Frozen is connected to Tangled. And that is kind of saying that Anna, Elsa, and Rapunzel are all cousins. Which would make sense because in the Frozen movie during the first time in forever scene, when Anna's opening the doors and is walking out for the first time in what feels like forever, you can visibly see what appears to be Rapunzel and Flynn Rider walking towards the castle. Which would make sense for them to be at Elsa's coronation if they are in fact family. So the other theory that connects Frozen to Tangled would be the trip that caused the King and Queen of Arendelle's ship to sink. It is rumored, or it's a theory, that the trip that they were taking was to Rapunzel's wedding, which again would make sense if they were family. And also, another thing that kind of helps strengthen that theory is that the King and Queen said that their trip was going to take about 2 weeks. From what it looks like, the trip from Arendelle to where Tangled takes place, which is Germany, is approximately 1,600 miles, which would take about 2 weeks there and back by ship. That would be another fact from that movie that would kind of help strengthen that theory that the King and Queen were going to Rapunzel's wedding. The theory that connects Frozen to The Little Mermaid, also kind of in connection with Tangled as well, I guess. Because the theory for this one is that in The Little Mermaid, the ship that Ariel finds is the King and Queen of Arendelle's ship. Which would make sense because if they were in fact going to Rapunzel's wedding, and let's say their ship sank about halfway through their trip, the halfway point would be what is called Atlantica, which is where The Little Mermaid is based. So if their ship were to have sank halfway into their trip, that's where it would have sank, which would make sense for Ariel to discover it. The last part of this theory that connects Frozen to Tarzan is that the King and Queen did not actually die during the shipwreck. The theory is that they were washed up onto the shore to a jungle island, which actually was kind of thrown into theory by the co-director of Frozen. Co-director of Frozen had said that the King and Queen did not die, that they were washed up onto the shore of a jungle island. Now, whether he was joking or not, it's kind of hard to tell. That would make sense for that theory, because if they were alive and they were washed up onto the shore of a jungle island, Tarzan was brought onto a jungle island. So if the Queen was pregnant when they left, it's very possible that she gave birth on the ship and that child was actually Tarzan. So the second theory that I found is that the movie Up is actually based on the main character Carl's trip to the afterlife. And one of the articles that I was reading described the movie as starting with a harsh dose of reality, and then kind of all of a sudden there's like all these magical elements, like the house flying with the balloons and the talking dogs. So the theory is that Carl actually passes away the night before he's supposed to be taken to the retirement home that's called Shady Oaks, and that the rest of the movie is kind of following his journey into the afterlife, which kind of makes sense for Russell to be there because in the theory, Russell would be Carl's guardian angel, trying to earn his wings, or as Russell calls it, his final badge. And another twist into that theory is that Russell is depicted as a child because Carl and Ellie, his wife that died at the beginning of the movie, always wanted a child and never got one. The next theory was one that I actually never heard of before, and that was that Ariel's mom was in Peter Pan and was killed by Captain Hook. In Peter Pan, Mermaid Lagoon, None of those mermaids are really memorable, but there's one that just kind of sticks out, and it just so happens to be a redhead that kind of looks like the spitting image of Ariel. And in The Little Mermaid, Ariel's mother is never obviously shown, but we do learn that Ariel's mother's name is Athena and that she was killed by pirates. So the theory is that possibly the redhead from Mermaid Lagoon is Athena, Ariel's mother, and because the mermaids and Captain Hook never really had a good relationship, Hook killed them, one of them being Athena, Ariel's mother. The last theory that I have is, I feel like it's another one that's kind of a well-known theory, is that Nemo from Finding Nemo is just a figment of Marlin's imagination. So basically we all know at the beginning of the movie, Marlin's wife Coral and all of their eggs but one get eaten by a fish. So the theory is that that one egg that did survive is actually a figment of Marlin's imagination, and that the whole movie is based on Marlin just trying to deal with the stages of grief. The first thing that I found that kind of helped strengthen this theory is the fact that the baby fish's name is Nemo, and in Latin, Nemo means nothing. So it would make sense that Nemo isn't really there if Nemo is Latin for nothing. The next little bit of information that I found that helps kind of strengthen this theory is that the 5 stages of grief are mapped out very clearly throughout the movie. The first one being denial, not wanting Nemo to go to school, which would make sense for Marlin to not want Nemo to go to school because of what happened to his mother and all his siblings. He wouldn't want that to happen to Nemo again. So the second stage of grief that is mapped throughout the movie is anger, which is when Marlin was yelling at Nemo for swimming out too far. And then the third stage is called bargaining. I've personally never heard of this stage of grief, but which is Marlin literally traveled his entire journey across the ocean to save his son. And the fourth stage would be despair, which is Marlin seeing Nemo getting flushed down the drain, thinking he's dead. And that would lead into the 5th stage of acceptance, which would be kind of learning to let go of the past, which is kind of when Marlin is okay with Nemo going to school. More so just kind of learning to cope with it better. But that's all that I have for you guys this week. Tune in the rest of the week to see what NEENA and Marissa's theories are. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, follow us on Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. Bye! Happens every video. Oh, my eye twitched. Would be... Ah!